Good morning, everyone. Welcome to today's meeting of the Assembly Committee on Ways and Means, Senate Committee on Finance, Joint Subcommittees on Public Safety, Natural Resources, and Transportation. Would the Secretary please call the roll?
Senator Gokuchia? Here. Senator Harris? Here. Senator Wynn? Here. Assemblywoman Anderson?
Present.
Assemblywoman Brown-May?
Here.
Assemblywoman Dickman?
Here.
Assemblywoman Gorillo?
Here.
Assemblyman Hafen?
Here.
Chair Watts?
And I am here. Thank you. All right. Members, we have 7 budgets before us today, 4 with the Department of Conservation and Natural Resources, and 3 with the Office of the Military in our last hearing before we begin closing budgets. So, with that, we will welcome the Department of Conservation and Natural Resources. Welcome back, Director Settlemyer. And we will go in order. So on our agenda, we have the Division of Outdoor Recreation, followed by the Office of State Historic Preservation, and then State Parks and State Lands. So whenever you're ready, please go forward.
Thank you, Chairman. James Settlemyer, Director of Conservation and Natural Resources. I have the pleasure of representing some great agencies and administrations. In that respect, we'll hand off the ball to our Deputy Administrator for Nevada Division of Outdoor Recreation, Matthew Weintraub.
Thank you. Sorry, I was a little eager there. All right, Matthew Weintraub. I'm the Deputy Administrator for the Nevada Division of Outdoor Recreation. So just a little bit about our division. We were created in 2019 and have a full complement of 4 staff currently. 3 of those positions are filled. We serve to advance and promote sustainable and world-class outdoor recreation opportunities in Nevada. And how we do that is we connect people and programs to resources to improve those equitable and sustainable access points to the outdoors. We've recently undergone or are currently undergoing a strategic planning process and have identified 5 goals for the division: supporting our outdoor recreation economy, establishing Nevada as a home for world-class outdoor recreation, connecting outdoor recreation and improving public health and community wellness, increasing community capacity for outdoor recreation stewardship, and also running Endor, which is our acronym, as an effective and efficient agency. We currently oversee 4 programs: the Outdoor Education and Recreation Grant Program, the Starry Sky Destination Program that we co-manage in concert with Travel Nevada, our Trail System and Outdoor Recreation Infrastructure Planning Grant, which is the Nevada Outdoor Recreation Infrastructure Grant Program, which is actually launching tomorrow, and we administratively oversee the Nevada Off-Highway Vehicle Program. As I mentioned, we have 4 FTEs, currently 3 filled in our division, and the Nevada OHV program has 1 FTE and 2 contract employees as well. A little bit about our budget for the upcoming biennium. I want to draw a highlight to 2 items: staff travel, which has increased. As I said, we really serve to connect people and programs to the outdoors, and to do that, we really need to be in communities, not just here in Carson. And so that increased staff travel allows us to do so, meeting with people, meeting with community leaders, meeting with land managers all around the state, and working to reduce those barriers, reduce red tape, to improve access and the end user's opportunity into the outdoors. And also want to draw your attention to the Nevada Outdoor Education and Recreation Grant Program. Within the governor's recommended budget, there is a one-shot appropriation for $250,000. That grant program has not yet been funded, despite being created in 2019, and so we're really excited to be able to deploy that grant and get more students into outdoor classrooms without walls around the state. And we do have a staff member who's already on board running that program, so once that budget is allocated, we'll be able to start dispersing those dollars immediately. And a little bit more about how we do our work and what we do. What we do is we've been very ambitious in seeking external, especially federal funding for some of our programs, right? You know, there's not much we can do with our budget and with just 4 staff members, but we've been responsible for leveraging or bringing in over $3.5 million of federal funding into Nevada in just about 3 short years we've been staffed and in existence. Some of that is in collaboration with Travel Nevada, dispersing the EDA State Tourism and Recreation Block Grant for various projects around the state. It's also successfully authoring another grant from the Economic Development Administration for a dark sky friendly lighting retrofit of municipal lights in Boulder City. and also collaborating with the National Park Service RTCA program and bringing 9 funded projects across the state, where normally that program funds about 3 to 4 programs per state per year, which because of our relationship with them, we've been able to triple that. And with that, just like to provide some space for any questions.
Thank you very much for the overview on the presentation. It's great to see the agency so successful so quickly, and it's good to see, and sounds like we've had a great return on investment from getting the program up and running. So with that, we will go into questions. We'll start with Senator Nguyen.
Good morning, and thank you for being here on this Friday morning. I have some questions just about the website. I'm looking at the website right now, and so I'm curious if the new website is approved and that money is there. When would you anticipate that that redesign, those security features would be available to the public?
Once we identify a contractor, once we identify those deliverables, we hope to get that up as soon as possible. We've been making some incremental changes with the current site, but as you can see, it's probably not the most user-friendly. So, kind of as soon as we can get that going, we will.
And then how do you anticipate when you're talking about the redesign, I guess, and that contract, how do you believe that new website would impact the economy in communities with outdoor recreation opportunities? Like, what kind of redesign, what kind of things do you want to make sure are incorporated in that, and how would that be helpful?
Thank you. Can I go direct? Sure. Thanks. So, we're hoping to not only have, just, I guess, expanded and easier to...
I do give your name for the record.
Sorry. Matthew Weintraub for the record, Deputy Administrator. We're hoping to have some easier access to our grant programs, grant fundings, just general information. But we're also conducting a economic impact analysis of the state for outdoor recreation. So we're hoping to be able to display that data, usually probably in a dashboard format, so you can drill down to the county, incorporated city level, Forest Service Ranger District level, and find tools like that. One of those FTEs that's within the OHV program is a mapping analyst, so we're able to create some geospatial tools with that contract position, and so those tools will live there. We also are currently in the process of inventorying every outdoor recreation industry business in the state, and hope to create some geospatial tools and some mapping tools that will live on our website, that new website, with that. So you could be able to look up who in your district is an outdoor recreation business, contact them, engage with them, things like that. So.
And then, Chair, may I ask another question? That kind of, you're talking about the grant activities. Can you provide an update on those outdoor education and recreation grant program activities, and how the increased travel would improve those programming? Like, I saw there was some increase in travel budget. Is that just because we're starting to get out and move around? And obviously, by the nature of outdoor recreation, you have a lot of space to cover, or can you kind of elaborate on that?
Yeah, Matthew Weintraub for the record. So part of that, right, it's to drive and elevate awareness of that outdoor recreation grant program. In the interim, where we haven't had funding to deploy those grant dollars, that staff member has been engaging with the Department of Education and communities around the state to helping them improve their knowledge and awareness of outdoor education principles and programs as well, helping a few communities actually build outdoor education programs. So that travel will just allow that, right? And we, technology is a wonderful, wonderful thing, right? It allows us to have these virtual meetings and engage, but we also know there's no substitute for that face-to-face engagement, and we'll just allow that staff member and the other staff members to do that as well. We'll also be having to do some analysis and some quarterly check-ins, right, on those grants and how they're being deployed, and that travel budget will allow us to do so as well.
Thank you. Members, any additional questions? Seeing none, thank you very much for your presentation today.
Thank you.
With that, we'll move on to SHPO.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. James Settlemeyer again for the record. Director, Department of Conservation and Natural Resources. The next up on your agenda is the State Historic Preservation Office, which we're very pleased to have Rebecca Palmer here to discuss the budget. She's a phenomenal wealth of information and have been rather entertaining to have great stories about the history and a lot of the backstories on things you don't always read. about some of the great things in our state. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Chair Watts and members of the committee, my name is Rebecca Palmer. I'm the administrator for the State Historic Preservation Office in the Department of Conservation and Natural Resources. I'm here today to present Budget Account 4205. This is our mission statement. You should be aware that every state in the nation, plus protectorates and territories, has a historic preservation office. So we're one of 54. We are established in the National Historic Preservation Act, but the intent of Congress was to give a local voice to preservation at a federal level. And we take that mission very, very seriously. And in fact, in our last Nevada Historic Preservation Plan, we had 7 community meetings where the public was able to express their concerns about preservation in this state. And so that is our mission and role. This is our, these are 2 pie charts with our budget outlined on them. Please note for the record that we receive a substantial portion of federal assistance. This is because in the National Historic Preservation Act, it identified the need to subsidize and assist the states in meeting these preservation goals. So this is a matched grant, a 60-40 matched grant, and we have been receiving it, the state has been receiving it since 1967. When the office was created in 1977, it came to the division. We have 11, well, right now we have 10, but FTE in this budget account, we will propose to have 11 in this budget account, and this also includes a contribution from the U.S. Forest Service to support the work of the office in helping the Forest Service with their compliance with the National Historic Preservation Act. These are our enhancements. I'd like to note that the first enhancement is a new historic preservation specialist, and the intent here is to provide multiple improvements in the division's operations. While I and my staff really support increases in salary and benefits, this will get to a much more systemic problem, and that is that we simply do not have enough staff to handle all of the federal projects that are occurring. In fact, the project that was just mentioned by my colleague from the Economic Development Administration was reviewed by my office. So federal undertakings of all sorts, including cellular towers, ATMs and banks, all of those require review by my office. So this will get to the systemic issue. So not everything is a nail when you've got a hammer in your hand. So, and I've worked my way all the way up in this division for 29 years, starting at the very lowest position, working my way all the way up. So we'll also establish an out-of-state travel, or reestablish the category and fund it. This will afford my office to travel to the National Conference of State Historic Preservation Officers, where we can have a voice in what goes on in Nevada. Our lack of presence there has compromised my state's ability to be present in those larger federal conversations. We were lucky in that the formula for our appropriation through Congress benefited us because it uses census records. But that may not be the case if they use the 2020 census or 2030 census, for example. So we benefited this time. Our appropriation has gone up due to our increase in population. But if that were not the case, we would want to be able to be at the table when the formulas were discussed to make sure that Nevada receives its fair appropriation. The computer replacements is, of course, a requirement of EATS, and our director's cost allocation is on there as well. we do face challenges, and I spoke to the organizational structure. Again, compensation is a wonderful thing for state employees, but it isn't the only thing. The employees in my division are very committed to preservation and supporting the Nevada citizens. But without a reorganization, they are unable to do all of the work that the public expects them to do. A reorganization would realign more cost-effectively the mission or the duties of those employees and allow them to do all of the work that the public expects them to, including the infrastructure reviews that we do for federal projects. Our review and compliance program are those federal projects. We review everything. My son, when I was very little, used to do a game of pointing everything out as we were driving and asking me if I'd reviewed it. And frankly, I had. So whether it's low-income housing, or it's ATMs, or it's community development block grant, or it's EDA, or it's BLM managed land or Forest Service managed land, all of those require review. Because again, Congress wanted the state to have a voice in those federal actions, and we take that role very seriously. We regularly receive comments from the public asking for their assistance with some federal agency and getting their voice heard, and we do that. And I have done that for 29 years. That's how I started in this position. And with that, I would be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you so much for your presentation. I believe we have a question from Senator Harris, Chair Harris.
Thank you, Chair Watts. Can you please discuss the current review and compliance workload associated with infrastructure projects? Specifically, I'm wondering if there's a current backlog for review and compliance requests.
Thank you for the question, Chair Harris. For the record, I'm Rebecca Palmer. We do not have a backlog, and there's a reason for that. Under federal regulation, we only have 30 days to review any submission. So we're on a deadline. I would like to say that the federal government is not on a deadline, but we are. So we have only 30 days to review these projects, so we move very quickly through the process. We believe that this affords an adequate opportunity for the public to comment, but if ever we believe that were not the case, we could stop that clock and allow them to afford them with more time. And we have done that in the past with tribal governments, with underrepresented communities who may not have heard about a project. And we want to make sure that they have an adequate opportunity to comment. So we always check to make sure that the public noticing requirements are appropriate and adequate. I hope that answers your question.
Yes, thank you. Can you please clarify if the cost-sharing agreement with the Forest Service is going to continue beyond the 2023-2025 biennium? And if not, how would funding for the new position be addressed?
Thank you for the question, Chair Harris. For the record, I'm Rebecca Palmer. We have an assertion from the Forest Service that it will continue past this budget cycle. However, as I mentioned previously, we did receive a significant increase in our appropriation from Congress, and that would be used to replace that funding if needed. Again, I've been with the office for 29 years. That is an annual appropriation from Congress. It has always been present, even during some parts of certain administrations wishing to do away with it. As soon as they realized the role getting federal dollars on the ground that we play, that was restored. So I have every reason to believe that the appropriation based on the 2022 census will remain exactly as it is, and that those are the funds we would use to fill in behind a Forest Service cost share agreement.
Thank you. Senator Goycochea.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, you've got a funding agreement with the Forest Service, but clearly 65-70% of the land mass in this state is controlled by another federal agency, the Bureau of Land Management. And especially as we're moving forward now with a number of renewable energy projects, and a lot of them are on public lands. I anticipate we will see more and more encroachment. I go back to, some of these windmills we've got out here. They're all 70 years old or more out on public lands providing stock water. Technically it's a violation to remove one of those. They are clearly historic, and they are part of our landscape out there. So again, how much cooperation are you getting from the other, you've got an appropriation from the Forest Service, but how much are we seeing on the major landholder in this state?
Through you, Chair Watts, to Senator Goycochea. For the record, this is Rebecca Palmer. That is a very good question. We have raised the issue of possible support from that federal agency. They have not been responsive to date.
Thank you. It is a concern. Again, we've got a lot of landscape out there that isn't being addressed. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Any other questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you again for your presentation today. And we're going to take a brief pause as we rotate some fiscal staff, but meanwhile, Director, if you want to help queue up state parks, feel free.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I greatly appreciate that. Again, James Settlemeyer, Director of Conservation and Natural Resources. Here today, we luckily have Bob Miguel from Nevada Division of State Parks, who's been kind enough to help us go on a few field trips so far in my short tenure to go check on a few dams that were up in, I think, Senator Goycochea's area to make sure that things were being done right on our various state parks and that everything was not going to cause problems for some of the local communities. And then, of course, meeting with Varlin Higbee up there on those issues. But with that, thank you kindly, Mr. Chairman. Take away, Bob.
Thank you.
Welcome, Mr. Miguel.
Thank you very much. Good morning, Chair Watts, members of the committee. My name is Bob Miguel. I'm the administrator for the Division of State Parks. So I will run through our budget presentation fairly quickly. That's our mission statement up there. I generally paraphrase it by saying we are lucky enough to take care of all of the cool stuff that Nevada has to offer and make sure that it's going to be here for our grandchildren's grandchildren. You can see we have 27 state parks that are scattered all over the state, a little over 150,000 acres, multiple bodies of water. We're not in every county, although I would like to change that eventually. But we do have 4 regions, the western, eastern, Tahoe, and the southern region. We have just under 300 staff between our permanent staff and our seasonal staff. And this is basically some of the stuff that we do, some of the highlights. We, like I said, protect everything that's in our charge to do so. We've increased our various tours and guided hikes and that to over 800 a year now. And we like to think that we're providing affordable, opportunities for all families to get out and enjoy the outdoors. Here's a kind of general pie chart for where all of our revenue comes from. What's really the most important here is to just show that over the years, we kind of go teeter back and forth around the 50-50 split between user fees and general fund. So we're dependent on the ability to both collect fees and also for you folks to help us out in the general fund area. So with that, I will run through our budget asks. I'm not going to hit every single one of these in excruciating detail. The one thing I will point out is there has been a budget amendment submitted to add a personnel tech position as well. So that's not on this chart, but that has been submitted. As I said earlier, we have around 300 employees, and we have one personnel person to take care of all of that. With collective bargaining and all of that kind of stuff, that person is buried. So one of the other positions, well, the other position that we're asking for is a project manager to help us move forward with some deferred maintenance projects and just have projects shovel ready as funding does come available. We do have we generate a lot of trash statewide, and so we can't always pay the trash bill, so we're trying to make sure that we can. The next one that I'll touch on is the 5 retail storekeepers. We already have those positions. We were able to go through the interim finance committee and get those positions established, so we have people in those positions. We're just asking to make that a permanent addition. And then the rest of that stuff, the 2-grade increase to the director's office cost allocation, kind of speak for themselves. The next slide, oh, sorry, that's on me to do the next slide. There you go. I usually have people for that, so I apologize. This next, all of the one-shots really have to do with the fact that all of our facilities are getting up there in age. They all need some kind of assistance, and we have a lot of old equipment to try to do that work. So we have a lot of equipment replacement stuff in here, and as you'll see, also a lot of money for deferred maintenance projects. The one thing that might stick out to people is a $14 million request for a new visitor center at Valley of Fire. Valley of Fire gets about 1 million visitors a year, and virtually every one of them goes through a visitor center, or our visitor center. That visitor center was built back when our visitation was closer to 400,000, so it is not adequately sized for the amount of visitation that it gets. We also were able to secure a private donation of about $7 million, so we're hoping to, but that is dependent on the state coming up with the rest of the money. So we're hoping to leverage this very generous gift and try to build a new visitor center that we will relocate and put in an area that can be expanded down the road should we need to. But our current spot where it sits right now, we can't expand any further. There just isn't any space to do that. So with that, like I said, the rest of that slide is all just kind of one-shot replacement of equipment that is all definitely outlived its useful life. And then the last thing on this slide is going to be again, another pretty significant ask for deferred maintenance. We have a deferred maintenance backlog of about $50 million. And in addition to that, we have a list of about $100 million worth of projects we would like to do in order to expand the facilities that we currently have. When I get to the next slide, you'll see that one of our challenges is just the fact that we have way more people coming than we used to have. So with that, I might as well switch to the next slide. And some of our division or agency challenges are expanding seasons. We used to have a pretty typical busy season of, call it Memorial Day through Labor Day, but those shoulder seasons are expanding. There's a lot more people wanting to get out all the time. So our visitation is increasing, not just at each park on an annual basis, but just when those people are coming. So we were dependent on seasonal staff, which back when we used to have a 3-month season, that was pretty easy to handle. But now that our busy season doesn't even end in a lot of parks, that's a challenge for us. Recruitment and retention, I think you'll probably hear that from every state agency out there. But I am proud to say that we have probably one of the lower vacancy rates in the state, because once you come to work for state parks, people generally stick around. We're a pretty good agency to work for. And by pretty good, I mean the best, but who's keeping track? Also, as you might guess, one of our challenges is impacts from the more severe storms, as we've currently, all seen. As Director Settlemeyer brought up, we just recently went over to Lincoln County to check out the damage to the dams there. So we still have some parks closed because of flooding. We're trying to make those repairs. But that kind of stuff and wildfire just is becoming more and more severe. I already kind of touched on the aging facilities. Most of our facilities are every bit of 40 years old or not more. And visitors don't always treat them as kindly as you might think. So, and then of course, resource protection. Like I said, it's super important for us that the resources that we protect are going to be there for generations to come. This next slide is some of the stuff that we've been able to accomplish in recent time. I say that with the very glaring photo there of Ice Age Fossil State Park that still isn't open, but we will be opening that this fall. I am certain. So right next to that is we're already designing that Valley Fire Visitor Center so that if we are able to get that funded, we're ready to hit the ground running with that project July 1st, as soon as the money would come available. Van Sickle and Spooner, we've been doing some work up there. Spooner Visitor Center is open to the public. Van Sickle, we're in the planning and design process there so that we can get that open to the public as soon as possible too. Some of the other projects that we've kind of been working on of late, you guys might know about the Library Pass program has been super popular. Almost overly popular in some areas. There's a pretty significant waiting list to get some of those. So we're super happy at how that program was received though. So that's 2 library passes or annual day use passes at every library in the state that you can just go in and check out and then go to you can use that pass for a week and then you got to bring it back so the next person can get it. So we were trying to make sure that cost isn't a barrier to anybody. So anybody that wants to go can get on the list or go down to their library and check it out if it's available and go out and see their local parks. Our online reservation system, we're working, weekly we have meetings, if not multiple meetings to develop this online reservation system. So we're hoping to go live with that. Also late summer, early fall, probably September, October, somewhere in there. And then our outer spatial app, that thing is basically ready to go, but we're going to launch that during the National Trails Summit that's coming up. The app, once you download it, it will show you all of the trails in all of our state parks. So we're hoping that this will help prevent or limit the number of people that get lost and that our folks have to go search for, especially in parks like Valley of Fire, where we tend to lose a couple of people a year. And when you lose them in the middle of summer, it doesn't usually end well. So we're going to try to really push this app out and get people to download that so that we hopefully can reduce the number of search and rescues that we have. So with that, I went through that kind of fast, especially for me, but I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you, Mr. Mergel. You did a great job, and it's great to see all the different initiatives that your division's working on. I'd like to go back briefly to some of the staffing positions just to get some additional details. So the project management workload, so you mentioned a lot of different things going on, including deferred maintenance and other things. But yeah, could you just discuss any current project backlogs and kind of just a little bit of elaboration on why that additional position is needed?
Sure. Thank you for the question. Bob Mergel, Administrator for State Parks, for the record. So we have, as I mentioned, we have about $50 million worth of deferred maintenance projects, but those, we've identified the project itself, like what the need is, but there's still a lot of work that has to go into that project, whether it's designing a new water system or whatever those are. They require a certain amount of planning, and then you have to get those plans once they are done. You have to get them, stamped by various engineers and that type of thing. So what we're trying to do is to identify all of those projects, but get them as close to shovel ready as possible so that when funding does come available, we can just jump right on that, just grab it out of the file and go out to contract, go out to bid with it.
Thank you for that. So again, could you just touch a little bit on kind of if there's a backlog in that workload and having things ready to go, and then with this position, would that increase your ability to, again, to kind of be ready to go?
Sure. Bob Mergel, again, for the record. Yes, that's what this person will do, is they will help us to get these projects ready to go. And then the thing is even if you contract out an entire project to a contractor or whatever, you still have to have management of that contract. So we have to make sure that people are doing the job that we're hired to do and doing it right. So that's why this is a project manager position, is because we anticipate them overseeing the contracts and making sure that the project flows smoothly from start to finish.
Wonderful, thank you. And then moving to the position that's in the budget amendment, the personnel tech. It sounds like 300 employees, one personnel person. That's quite the challenge. But if you could just, discuss a little bit about the benefits that your agency is expected to see from adding the new personnel tech to handle those issues, that'd be great.
Great. Thank you for the question. Again, Bob Mergel for the record. So as I mentioned, we have about 300 employees. About half of those are seasonal. The seasonal employees, by their nature, means you're doing paperwork on every PCN at least twice a year, if not more. So if people don't make it through their season, you're terminating them, and then you're hiring a whole new person. So, our personnel analyst, as one person handling all of that paperwork, plus all of the other just typical paperwork that an agency has to deal with, she just can't do it. It is impossible for one person to handle that task. Add into that the collective bargaining. We have employees in, I believe, 6 different collective bargaining units. As they get collective bargaining agreements, you have to know which employee gets the 2 extra personal days, and which employee gets paid lunches, and which employee doesn't. And so reviewing the timesheets every 2 weeks, again, it is impossible for our one current person, who is awesome, for the record. It's impossible for her to do.
Thank you. We'll make sure that's included in the record, that she's awesome. Then I have just a couple quick questions about kind of some of the infrastructure-related projects. One is, and I know that I've talked with you about this before, you don't have to go into extreme detail, but could you just tell the committee a little bit about some of the things that your division's working on to expand electric vehicle charging in state parks?
Sure. Thanks for the question. Again, Bob Mergel for the record. So we've installed a electric vehicle charging station as a collaborative effort with the Governor's Office of Energy at Rye Patch. Unfortunately, there's still some issues with that one in that they didn't actually build it to be ADA compliant. So we're trying to get that remedied so we actually can open it up and make sure that we don't injure somebody that's trying to get to the charging station to use it. But anyway, so we've put that in. We've also been working with Rivian to install vehicle charging stations at multiple state parks throughout the state. So that project's still moving forward. It was moving forward pretty fast, and then Rivian had some issues. And so anyway, it's still, we're still working with them, and we're still hopeful to get those vehicle charging stations put in place. And as we're building stuff like the Valley Fire Visitor Center, as we're coming up with the conceptual drawings for that, we're absolutely contemplating putting in vehicle charging stations at all of our newer facilities as we build them.
Thank you very much for that. And that takes me to the last bit, new facility. Senator Wynn and I were out at Valley of Fire recently, completely understand the need for a new visitor center. I was wondering if just at a high level, if you could explain kind of where the new facility is going to go, and again, without getting into all the nitty gritty, kind of where's that going to be, and what's the general plan to kind of construct that and transition over from the old facility?
Sure. Thank you again for the question. Bob Mergel for the record. So if you guys came in through the west entrance, probably, it's the most likely one to have come in from. As you come in there, our campground is kind of on the left, the north side of the road. The visitor center is going to be on the south side of the road in that virtually that same location. It's a nice big open area, but we can still put that visitor center up close to the rock formations, which is where people want to go. Most of them, when they pull in, they either run straight to the bathroom, or they run straight over and touch one of the rocks or climb into the little hole there. So we want to make sure we have, one, plenty of bathrooms, and two, get it close enough to where they can actually go play on the rocks. So that's our intention, is to put it in there. And then, like I said earlier, that will allow us opportunity for expansion if we need to expand, because the footprint, I guess there's opportunity to increase that footprint in that location. And it'll be closer to the campground if people want to walk over there for the camp store and that kind of thing. And just briefly, I'll touch on the old visitor center. Our plans for that is probably long-term to convert that into a restaurant, because there's no place to eat out there really unless you buy one of our super awesome sandwiches out of the little refrigerator thing. So.
Great. That makes a lot of sense, and I'm excited to see that come to fruition. Next, we have questions from Assemblywoman Brown May.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the presentation. And after a long day of hiking and playing on the rocks, those are super awesome sandwiches, I will just say. First, I want to thank you and congratulate you on some of the work you've done relative to accessibility. Thank you for bringing up ADA, especially as it comes to electrical vehicle charging, which is really important. And then, as we revamp our trails and accessibility for people who use wheelchairs, right, that we're able to access the outdoors, irrespective of your physical ability, is really important. So thank you for your efforts there. My question is really about the gift shop and the operations currently. So you have Decision Unit E274 for additional retail storekeepers and position reclassifications. You talked about filling a couple of those positions and then recruiting. But how are you managing your gift shop operations currently, and what changes are prompting this new recommendation for a new position?
Thank you for the question, Bob Mergel, for the record. So when we first started the gift shop program, we kind of borrowed from the parks seasonal positions. We needed the seasonal positions, but it was the easiest way to get staff into those visitor centers. So we took park aide positions who by job description should be out picking up trash, cleaning bathrooms, doing that kind of stuff. And we took those positions, put them into the gift shops, and then asked them to be retail storekeepers instead. It worked okay, but we really, needed those positions out in the park because that's where they were needed, right? And we needed to hire people for the job that they're actually doing. So that's why we wanted to get the retail storekeepers. Valley of Fire, Spring Mountain Ranch, Sand Harbor, those gift shops, and Cathedral Gorge, some of those started out as pretty small little things. You had a couple of little items for sale behind the counter. Well, Valley of Fire is huge, right? It's a huge gift shop, and same with Sand Harbor. So it's just got to the point where we have to run it like a store. So many people go in there, and that would be like asking me to run a store. I didn't get into this job to do retail stuff, so if you ask me to design a shirt for sale, nobody's going to buy that thing. So they're just not. So we had to hire people to do what we need them to do, which is to have those gift shops make money, and they're doing that. So, but we've gotten to the point where we're now having to run Valley of Fire as its own thing. It used to kind of be run out of our Southern Region office, and it's too big for that now. So we have to run it like its own little independent store, which is why we needed a retail storekeeper too, to oversee the program right there, and multiple retail storekeepers to actually run the cash registers. We're now working on trying to get the retail storekeeper position to be classified as a seasonal position so that we can actually utilize those during our higher, peak traffic times. So hopefully that answers the question.
It does. Thanks. Follow-up, Chair. Go ahead. Thank you. So I don't see budget projections or revenue projections relative to what you anticipate your retail stores are going to operate at. I'm assuming that would be the benefit that you would expect. Can you talk a little bit about that? Do you have a revenue projection, or what is the What's the benefit that you're going to realize by adding this position?
Thank you for the question, Bob Mergel, for the record. So the gift shop program is like a self-funded position, or a program, if you will. So the money that the gift shop program makes as a whole goes back into running the program. So it's critical that the gift shops make money, or we have to lay people off, right? So I don't know at Valley of Fire specifically if there's going to be a net increase in sales necessarily. We're just trying to keep pace with the sales that are happening there, and get people in the right classifications, the right job classifications. That's really our trigger there. The money that the gift shop program makes, like the profit, if you will, is what funds our interpretive programming. If you'll notice in our budget, we don't have a line item for interpretive programming. We just do that. And so how we do that is through proceeds from the gift shop sales. So we do, having retail storekeepers, like I said, people whose job is to come up with better items for sale and that type of thing. We do anticipate that those positions will pay for themselves. And if they don't, then we'll have to look at whether that gift shop really needs to exist or not. But we also look at that as a service that we're providing. So a lot of people go to our parks, and that's what they're going there for. When I travel around the state, I collect little shot glasses from every state that I go to. I don't drink, but I like the little shot glasses there. They don't take up as much space as a beer stein.
I'm going to go on the record as saying we collect magnets everywhere we go. So thank you for that. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Next, we'll go to Assemblywoman Gorlow.
Thank you so much, Chair, and thank you for being here. I love when you guys come because I see these presentations of pictures and I get excited. I'm talking to my colleague like, oh, we need to go here, we need to go there. And we've designed shirts for you, so in our spare time up here. But anyways, I was wanting to ask about the Library Park Pass program. Are you looking to expand those, or will there be more in the future?
Thank you for the question, Bob Mergel, for the record. Yes, this first year was a pilot program. We didn't know where to start, frankly. So we were like, 2 seems good. Let's do 2. So we're going to need to increase the number, but also, recognizing that we can't have it become just a way for everybody to get into parks for free. Because like I said earlier, we are still dependent on actually bringing in revenue through user fees. So we want to make that opportunity available to as many people as possible, but we also still have to recognize that we're never going to get it to everybody that wants one. So we will try to expand it, though, yes.
Right. Thank you. And yeah, that makes sense. I'm not making it for everyone. You do need those fees. But I also had a quick question. You have a passport, I believe, also for state parks. Is it possible to get some of those so I can pass them out into my district, or any of us for our districts?
Bob Mergel, for the record. Yes, I guess is the short answer. Happy to get you some. What we're trying to do as part of this app that I mentioned earlier is to make our passport digital, so then anybody can get it. They're fairly expensive to print. We were trying to make them available at places like Sportsman's Warehouse, Cabela's, and stuff like that, but we put that on our website that they're available there, but they wouldn't let us know when they're out of them. So then we look bad because they go and try to get it because our website says they can get it there, and they don't, because they don't let us know that they're out. So we're probably still going to keep the paper ones because there are some people that just like to stamp the thing. It's just the physical thing they like to do. But we're also going to launch the app with the digital passport, so anybody can download the app, and then it'll geo-reference you. So when you get into the park, it'll digitally stamp your passport.
That's really cool. Thank you. I'll look for that. And I'm sorry, when was that app expected to come out?
Bob Mergel, for the record. The app is supposed to launch next month. It's live now. It's going to take us a little while to get the digital passport. We're still working on what the digital stamps are going to look like because we've gone back and forth on whether those should be super cool, colorful things. And then I'm like, I think we should just dumb those down and make it look like the stamp where we ran out of ink and it's just like a stamp. So anyway, I think that's the right way we're gonna go.
Great, thank you for that. And I hope all the other folks that run passport programs are listening, because as somebody who has moved more into the digital age, I constantly find myself being somewhere and realizing that I don't have the passport on me. And then I have multiple passports, and so really applaud the digital passport idea. So I believe we have a question from Assemblywoman Anderson.
Thank you, Chair, and it's more of a comment. I also wanted to just thank you also for the work that you guys have done with, I think it's the 4th grade classes, that they all get right now I still think it's paper, but it might be digital in the future, a passport or a way for them to come into all of our parks. So I just wanted to make a quick comment about how the teachers that I've talked with about that, as well as friends of mine who have children that are in 4th grade, how much they enjoy it, and thank you for continuing that program.
Thank you.
Thank you. And the only thing I wanted to ask about, going back to the library pass program, so I understand that it's new. Do you have any projection on kind of the loss of fee revenue that's going to come from that program, or that's something that we're still kind of figuring out?
Bob Mergel for the record. I'm hoping that there's none. And the reason I say that is we're hoping that this gets people out to our parks that otherwise wouldn't have gone anyway. So we're hoping that really in the end, if anything, maybe there's a slight increase, because once you get to one of our parks, as probably everybody in here that's been to one of our parks knows, once you go, it's worth $5 or $10, whatever the fee is for the day. So if you can afford the gas to get out there, frankly, you can afford the $5 or $10 to get in. So anyway, that's probably a longer answer than I needed to give.
I appreciate that. Thank you. Members, any additional questions? Seeing none, thank you very much for your presentation, Mr. Mergel.
You ready, Mr. Chairman? Thank you, Mr. Chairman. James Settlemeyer, for the record, Director, Department of Conservation and Natural Resources. The previous individual in the presentation, if everybody wants to write it down, Outer Spatial is a great app you could probably download right now. Outer Spatial. That being said, I have the pleasure now to introduce someone I've known for a couple decades. Worked with him when I got out of college on the Conservation District program. So in that respect, no further ado, we have the administrator from the Nevada Division of State Lands, Charlie Donahue.
Good morning, Chair Watts, members of the committee. Pleasure to be here before you. I believe the agency deputy, Ellery Stoller, is going to be joining me. The Division of State Lands serves as the real estate agents for state agencies. We acquire and dispose of real property. We also certify permanent improvements on state property. Just yesterday, I signed off on 4 electric charging stations, certifications for various state parks out there in the world. So I just want to make that linkage of what we do with one of our sister agencies. We also are the house of the Nevada Tahoe Resource Team, which is an interagency team that does environmental improvement work up at Lake Tahoe. And we also have staff for the State Land Use Planning Agency, as well as IT and GIS services. We hold the historical records of the state for real property. We currently have 19 FTEs. The agency is principally funded through the general fund. About 20% of our revenue comes from transfers. We receive some funding from the department. Thank you, Valerie. Yes, we receive some funding from the Department of Wildlife, from one of our land agents who is dedicated to working on real property issues for that department. We also receive revenue from either bonds or interest in bonds for some of our Tahoe Resource team members. I would like to mention that the program manager and the admin assistant who are associated with that team, their salaries are funded through the general fund, but their operating costs are covered by the interest from the bonds that we receive to implement environmental improvement programs. That interest is slowly dwindling, and we believe that will be probably expired December 2025, if I recall correctly. And then we receive through NDEP, Department of Energy grant, principally associated with our planner who organizes and coordinates the state clearinghouse, which is the central location to receive comments for actions on federal lands. We have a number of enhancements, only actually not a number, 3 enhancement requests within our governor's recommended budget. The first one is to restore in-state travel. Our supervisory land agent over the last previous biennium had some health issues, and that individual wasn't able to travel, and that person in that position would have really needed to be present. So we gave an estimate about, I believe, it was approximately 2 or 3 trips down to Vegas to participate in in-person meetings. Probably the most significant enhancement request is a modernization of our land management system. This is our bread and butter. Almost all of our employees utilize this system on a daily basis. As I said, we hold the historical records for real property. Those are held in our vault, but we also have them electronically. We also authorize the use and occupancy by third parties on state land, and we refer to those as interests. We issue permits, licenses, easements for those interests, and we have that captured spatially, electronically through our land management system. It's also our billing system, so we invoice for that use of state land, and then we receive that revenue, and we track it through our land management system. And then our final enhancement unit is just to stay current with the EAT schedule to replace 5 computers for the agency. And with that, Mr. Chair, I'm more than happy to answer any questions, or I'll probably be relying on Ellery if they're a little too technical or in the weeds.
All right. Thank you very much for your presentation, Mr. Donahue. Senator Gocochea?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and yeah, just kind of reach out a little more explanation on your modernized land management system and how it improved the efficiencies, but then I'm more interested in, maybe you can tell us just how, a collapse of that system, how it makes you vulnerable. Kind of touch on that, please.
Thank you for the question. I'm Ellery Stoller, Deputy Administrator for the Division of State Lands. Our land management system was deployed in 2008. It has great functionality, but it is very outdated. And so we see principally 2 main benefits to modernizing that system. One is to enhance the public-facing elements. Right now, the public is unable to submit applications online and to submit credit card payments. We receive applications by mail and we receive paper checks. In addition, we use the system on a daily basis, but it requires a lot of manual entry and it requires a lot of development of documents outside of the system that we then have to upload and attach to the right place within the database. In terms of potential revenue that could be lost or the potential costs of collapse of the system, as Administrator Donahue mentioned, LMS is our main accounting platform for the collection of revenue, application fees, and annual use fees. And that amounted to about $1.3 million last fiscal year. So if our system were to collapse, we would be unable to invoice and unable to collect that revenue.
I thank you. And then how long do you anticipate it'll take to get this new program up and running? Will you have it by the 23-25 biennium? Do you think, can you get it done this cycle?
Thank you for the question. Ellery Stoller, Deputy Administrator. We believe we'll be able to launch the system within a 2-year period. 6 months for the contracting process. We'll go through an RFP process in coordination with the purchasing division, and then an 18-month process for development and deployment.
I thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Members, any additional questions for state lands? All right. Thank you very much for your time and your presentation today. Thank you to everyone who presented with the Department of Conservation and Natural Resources. We're going to shift to the Office of the Military. We have 3 budgets. I know we'll need to, I think, switch presentations. We're switching staff as well, so. Welcome, Major General Barry.
Thank you.
Whenever you are ready, no rush, please introduce yourselves for the record and you can proceed.
Major General Andre Berry, Nevada Department of Military, and I have with me, and she will also talk next, is Cheryl Tyler. She is our state administrator. First of all, good morning and thank you for the opportunity to be here, and I appreciate you. First of all, thank you for your service. We hear that a lot, but you guys do a lot for our state too, and make a lot of money for it. Not so. First of all, I just want to say we want to start off with our mission statement in terms of your Nevada National Guardsmen. Our mission, and the biggest things I point out, is that we have a radio organization and we perform state and federal missions globally and domestically. Right now you have guardsmen who are all over the world, and also you have guardsmen who are in threat areas, and but protecting our nation. Okay. Also want to point out the fact that your Nevada National Guard is all over the state. Sometimes people think we're just in the north and the south, but we have facilities all over the state, and you have approximately 4,800 guardsmen that are serving around the state in a what we call an M-Day or part-time role, and they're also in dual status guardsmen. There are teachers and work in casinos and work in nonprofits. They just do great work, and then you also have full-time personnel. And then I want to talk about, just briefly, our strategic priorities and what is important to not just our organization, but also to the state, is readiness. And we don't talk about readiness just from the standpoint of what we do for the war fight, so to speak. We also talk about readiness in terms of what we do for our people. The second thing is care for our members and their families and employers. If we don't have great employer support, you cannot have a great Nevada National Guard. Our third thing is diversity, equity, and inclusion, which is we don't care who you are, where you come from. If you want to serve and take an oath to defend this nation against all enemies, foreign and domestic, we welcome you into the organization. We also are going to create a culture that is welcoming. Our fourth priority is work in the community. We are a community-based organization. We can't do our work. We're neighbors helping neighbors, and that's the biggest difference you'll see in the National Guard and the active component is we live in the communities that we serve in. And the last one is development. We put a lot into developing our people, not just in terms of the ability to do their military mission, but also their leadership skills, how they take care of themselves personally, internally also. And we talk about the health of the force. I just want to point out some highlights. We've had, over the last 2.5 years, we've had 10 deployments around the world. We currently have, like I said before, people are deployed around the world, and our biggest one that some people ask me about quite a bit is we have our 137th, which is in Romania right now, which is in a war zone pretty much. We also created a J9 directorate. One of the things that was important to me coming into this profession into this role is to make sure that we had a directorate that could take care of our people. What we ask our people to do is just not normal, and I wanted to have a directorate that could put all our people processes together so we could be more preventive versus reactive. I talk also in here about we are required to do a DEOX, which is a climate assessment in terms of how we're doing as a culture in the military. On the Army side, we improved in every area in terms of how we take care of the force, and on the air, we improved in at least half of them. We have a prevention strategy now, which is more investing in our people. We talk about our state partnership program. Our state partnerships are Tonga and Fiji, and we just picked up Samoa as our new partnership for the Nevada National Guard. Also encourage people to, if you ever get the opportunity, please come and visit our state partnerships. We right now have members from the military from Tonga and Fiji who are here, who are working with our military members in our Best Warrior competition. We've grown in our educational initiatives. We have, a lot of people don't know that we have a STEM Academy in Las Vegas, and we have one in up north here, and we're looking to grow that. We also have a high school, the Battleborn Youth Challenge Academy in Carlin, Nevada. We have the ability to expand those initiatives, so we're trying to do our part from an educational standpoint with a very low cost, because you have to have MOUs with your local school districts. We have certified teachers, et cetera. We have 58 students right now in the Youth Challenge Academy, and we've had at least, I believe, 7 elementary schools go through our STEM academies north and south. We you'll read a lot about the recruiting challenges around the military around the world. That is not our challenge in Nevada. We are in the top 5 on the air and the Army side. We're top 5 for readiness. A lot of you know that we completed our covert operations about a year ago. And a couple things I'll add before I turn it over to Ms. Tyler is we created a cyber force protection team in anticipation. If you want to attack a nation, it's not just in the warfight now. Just take out their necessary operations, their grids, take out their power, take out their ability to use technology. So we now are working very hard to build up our cyber force protection efforts. I was just down this past week at the Nellis Air Force Base. We met with the director of the Air National Guard. We are looking at remissioning one of our units to put more into the cyber efforts, because we know this is the biggest threat that we face as a nation today. Also, our modular airborne firefighting, which is our MAFs, which is the C-130s, they go out and fight the fires. They're prepping now. We had a record firefighting season, not in Nevada, thank goodness, but they're prepping right now in anticipation of what we may be up against. We're hopeful that with all the moisture, it won't be as bad. And the last 2 things I'll say is we have what's called a combat training squadron down at Nellis. We anticipate, as I said before, with our meetings with the leadership of the National Guard Bureau and with our active components, we could grow as the Nevada National Guard almost 1,000 people in the next 5 to 10 years. So we're very much postured and positioned to grow, but you also have to have the infrastructure to make that happen. Just recently on the Army Guard side, I believe we were in the top 3 in the nation for retention, which means we're not just bringing people in, they're also staying in our organization. And the last thing I'll add here before I turn it over is we put a lot of time and attention into mental health and mental wellness. Some of the things that we ask our people to do is just not normal. And we picked this up over the last 2 or 3 years that we have to invest more in our people. There's a lot of what we call the invisible wounds that they carry around, and we've quadrupled our efforts, not just in services and resources, but also in personnel. So we thank you for the opportunity to just say that you're Nevada National Guard, always ready, always there, doing the work required to not just protect the homeland, but this great nation. At this time, I'll turn it over to Ms. Tyler.
Good morning. Cheryl Tyler, ASO4 for Office of the Military, for the record. First, I'd like to introduce this slide. So besides what we receive in federal funds and state funds in our budget accounts, on top of that, the Air National Guard receives about $78 million a year for their operations. The Army Guard receives about $108 million a year. So Office of the Military state employees provide administrative, accounting, personnel, firefighting, security, range operations, family services, programs assistance, environmental, project management, operating and maintenance services to the Nevada National Guard for all the facilities we have within our agency. Agency also has 3 youth programs: Battleborn Youth Challenge Program in Carlin, Starbase Henderson in Southern Nevada, and Starbase Sierra in Northern Nevada. A master cooperative agreement is established between the National Guard Bureau and the State of Nevada through Office of the Military. The MCA includes all terms and conditions related to NGB's federal funds contribution for the operation and training of the Nevada National Guard. There are currently 15 programs as shown in the slide, out of that 13 of which are 100% federal reimbursed. Also, there are cooperative agreements for our youth programs. Battleborn Youth Challenge is 75% federal reimbursed. Starbase are 100% federal reimbursed programs. First budget account we'll be discussing is budget account 3650. So budget account 3650 funds are utilized for the operation and maintenance of the Nevada Air and Army facilities throughout the state and for the operations of the youth programs. First major enhancement unit we'll be discussing is E125, which requests funds to hire 2 National Guard range specialist positions and associated operating costs. Army Regulation TC 3-20.40 requires all soldiers to qualify on their assigned weapon. Currently, Nevada does not have a small arms weapon ranges that will allow Nevada Guard soldiers the ability to successfully qualify on assigned weapons within the state. Next decision unit requires for 3 military security officer 2 in support for the increased security services for the Reno Air Base. These positions are 100% federal reimbursed. This decision unit requests funds to hire 3 security officer positions to support increased services for the Air Base. The unit reviewed the structure of the Air National Guard and determined that there is a need for 3 supervisory positions to our MSO ones currently there. Next decision unit requires for 3 additional facility staff and operating costs for our new site called Camp Washoe in Northern Nevada. Office of Military recently acquired a site previously owned by UNR called Navy Operations Support Center. This site consists of 3 structures with a total square footage of 34,380. These new positions will handle the operation needs that is required to maintain these facilities. Next decision unit requests for 5 additional personnel for Office of the Military. Office of the Military has grown significantly with the implementation of new programs and with a new division under the department. Agency needs additional support staff at the Director's Office to meet the needs that come with the expansion of agency operations. Next decision unit requests for 2 custodial positions for Southern Nevada. Office of the Military has approximately 448,000 square feet of structures in Vegas area. These positions will ensure sufficient custodial staff are in place. The next decision unit requests to hire a cybersecurity specialist to provide planning and response capabilities relating to cyber attacks. This position will provide a cyber capability to the state that would legally be able to interface with state cyber governmental organizations in order to build expertise and also leverage the Nevada National Guard cyber capabilities. This would build unity of effort across the state enterprise in order to rapidly support a cyber attack in order to defend the networks. Additionally, the cyber position would facilitate the ability to conduct vulnerability assessments in partnerships with other state agencies. This position would facilitate the rapid buildup of a complete cyber response force in case of an emergency. Next decision unit requests funds for a deputy administrator for the Youth Challenge program. Deputy administrator position is being requested to assist in the managing of the day-to-day operations of the Challenge program. With the start of the classes, the program needs this position to assist the administrator and managers of various groups within the program in order to facilitate a successful program. Next decision unit requests to fund a youth programs administrator to oversee all our youth programs. The Office of the Military now has 3 youth initiatives. The program has the ability to grow and is in the process of adding another class in Southern Nevada for Starbase. Currently, with the 3 programs, there are already 60 legislatively approved FTEs. At its current stage, with the and the potential for growth, having a higher level of administration consistently is merited for the purposes of oversight and fidelity. Next decision unit requests for a psychological health manager position in Northern Nevada. The primary purpose of this position is to provide preventive, remedial, and support services aimed at improving and sustaining the psychological health of Nevada military members and their families. Duties focus on outreach education, prevention, needs-based and psychological assessments, diagnosis, short-term problem resolution, and provision of a referral for evidence-based interventions. Next are a few one-shot appropriations that for within this budget account. First one is a decision unit to request for facilities maintenance projects for all our facilities throughout the state. These projects will ensure the safety and health of personnel and public utilizing our facilities. This decision unit funds minor building renovations, repairs, maintenance, preventive maintenance, and building asset replacements of our facilities. Next one-shot appropriation, request funds for replacement of equipment for our facilities throughout the state. Tools that are requested for replacement are considered to be vital tools to the success of the maintenance of our buildings. Having reliable equipment will ensure facility staff can effectively perform their responsibilities. The last one-shot appropriation is a decision unit to request funds for new equipment also for our facilities group. Most new equipment is requested to perform preventive maintenance on buildings and systems. The next slide is a list of all our CIPs that were governor approved and are in the process of being requested for your approval. Next is budget account 3655. Budget
And
account.
actually, I think we will pause at this budget account and do some questions, if that's okay.
That's fine, sir.
Thank you very much. So while we're on budget account 3650, we will start with question from Assemblywoman Anderson.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for how efficient this is. If you guys could start doing stuff, it'd be great. You know, just, my goodness, you're crazy active. So there's a few questions I've got. The first one has to do with the STAR-based program, excuse me. Looking at some background information, it looks like there's a large amount of students that have been involved in this. Can you provide a little bit more of an update and your plans to expand the program? How do we help you? It looks like eliminate. There's a pretty significant wait list right now for students that would like to be involved. So how do we help you do that?
Thank you for the question, Major General Berry, Nevada Department of Military, Assemblywoman Anderson. The best way that we can help is first of all, having the staff. I have to figure out how to come up with the facilities, and the programs have to be on a military facility. It's not an option. So we're expanding the facility in Henderson. I have the ability to expand the facility in the Nevada Air National Guard. And also, we actually can put a facility, I have the ability to have a STAR-based program even in Carlin, where our Battleborn Youth Challenge Academy is. I could take one of the buildings there, but you have to have the personnel, and that's just a requirement. They have certified teachers and to go with the curriculum. And when we had the assessment done, I believe, within the last 30 days, we were told that we were lacking a deputy director for the Henderson facility. So we want to meet the educational requirements, and I highly encourage everyone to please go out and talk to your local educators in terms of what happens in those classrooms. It's amazing. And if you can do STEM, it's just from a confidence and learning and critical thinking, it just sets you up so much for success. And then also, when we talk about the Battleborn Youth Challenge Academy, and in terms of just having the requisite ratio of leadership to personnel, to the students, that's how you can help us, is just making sure we have the people. So we can expand, and we want to do our part on the educational process, and the majority of the funding comes through federal funds. So if we can expand the personnel, we can expand our educational programs. Thank you.
Thank you. And you mentioned in there that there was a federal funding. So do you know what the match would be for every dollar that we would give, or how that works exactly?
For the record, Cheryl Tyler, the Youth Challenge program is 75% federal reimbursed, while the STAR-based programs are 100% federal reimbursed. No funding for STAR-based.
Okay. So with the loss of, I guess basically without having a deputy administrator who, I guess, again, remember I'm from education, so I need to kind of have a visualization with this. It would kind of be like a deputy administrator would be kind of a principal or somebody like kind of overseeing it in the different areas. Without that individual, How has that impacted the STAR-based program?
Major General Andre Berry, Nevada Military Department. Thank you for the question. You don't have the ability, it goes back to like a principal, vice principal. You said it exactly right. We get written up for not having the leadership oversight. One of the things I tell everybody is we are not educators, and so we have to have subject matter experts in the education business when we are bringing young people into our programs. So it just goes back to the same thing you would have like at a school, having a principal, vice principal, or an administrator, vice administrator. So that's the biggest thing. And when they've notified us of this and they would come back and we have the same discrepancy, it's just not good for our program. Thank you.
Thank you. And last question, I promise, Chair. Do you already have somebody in mind based upon our hiring issues that we're currently experiencing all over? Or do you anticipate that this position will be easy to hire?
Major General Berry, Andre Berry, Nevada Military Department, we have people waiting to sign up because when the educators come and see these programs, they ask, especially our teachers, ask, can they get into our classrooms? And so we will have no problem fulfilling the positions. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we'll go to Assemblywoman Gorlow.
Thank you, Chair. And I had a couple questions on the Battleborn Youth Program. Could you talk a little bit about the efforts to increase student enrollment in that program?
Thank you for the question. Major General Andre Berry, Nevada Military Department. Great question in terms of we have the ability to go up to about 120 people. We have currently 58 students. We were actually there this week. And it comes down, first of all, to the relationships with your local school districts, relationships with your local counselors is huge for us, and then the relationships with your community, making sure that we have educated not just your traditional organizations, the nonprofits, or those who come from the underrepresented communities, working with your local Boys and Girls Clubs. We have learned that we have to get non-traditional in terms of getting out there and educating about what the programs have, what they have to offer. And in our first couple classes, we had just 30 students. We have now doubled that. And they know I am very aggressive in terms of the expectation because we know we have the population. And if you think about some of those facilities that service students that are struggling in school or need more structure, we have to have better partnerships with them. So we've gotten relentless about that. One of the things that I've done is our newest director of the Battleborn Youth Challenge is the former school superintendent of Mineral County. So we brought somebody in that now understands school districts, has the partnerships with the superintendents, understands the nuances that you go through in terms of what we can get from school districts in terms of who's eligible and who's not, finding those lists of who may have dropped out of the system. So now we just have a better processes to access and know who to talk to and relationships and connections. And so we work very hard on that. And then the last thing I'll say is you have to have the right recruiters. I don't think we did a great job initially when we were set up in having the recruiters that knew the communities so they could make the connections. And then I said last thing, one more thing is in our recruiters that do military recruiting are in all the schools. So now we are partnering up our Youth Challenge recruiters with our military recruiters, so they're having access to the high schools also. That, the more you know the schools, the administrators, the easier it is to have the access to the students who may be a good fit for Youth Challenge Academy. So nonstop effort behind better connections with the right audience and to educate our state on who could be eligible to attend our Youth Challenge Academy.
Thank you very much. Follow-up, Chair? Great, thank you. So with the addition of the new deputy administrator position, assist in lowering the staff vacancy rates, and how are you also looking to recruit for those positions?
Thank you for the question, Major General Andre Berry, Nevada Military Department. One of the challenges we have with the recruiting part of some of the positions is the cost of living in that area. And I am so hopeful that we are able to get raises. I don't know if I should be saying that in this position, but that's the biggest thing. I was talking to one of the teachers at the Youth Challenge Academy this week, and she advised me that her son, who's 22 years old, who works in the mines, makes like $120,000 a year, and we offer half that to be a cadre in the position there. So that's what we're up against. Now, the Nevada Military Department can offer up our personnel to work as cadre in that location, but that's expensive in terms of it takes away some of the budget for the Youth Challenge Academy. So we have to, we're looking at ways to maybe find additional stipends for housing, because that's the biggest piece that we're up against. And so you find the interest, but then people find just higher paying jobs. So we're hopeful that we can offer more salary, but also we can look at other ways. And we also have talked about, I talked to the Mr. Ponder this week about that, is we also can look at ways of maybe alternate shifts where you could be there, because if you work there, you can live on campus and then maybe work like 3 days a week and then go home for 3 days. And have a rotating shift like that. So we're looking at more creative ways so the cost of living can be mitigated through different solutions, because that's the biggest thing we face, not finding people, but the cost of living and then having higher paying jobs in the area.
Thank you. Can you talk just a little bit how that deputy administrator is going to help in lowering the vacancy rates?
Thank you. Again, Andre Berry, Major General Andre Berry, Nevada Military Department. Now, what that will allow is that you don't have to always have your administrator on campus. That person can be throughout the state now. So right now, with having one administrator, you're responsible for the day-to-day operations, but having a deputy administrator, they can be working throughout the state. They can help with recruiting, they can help with retention, they can help going to the schools, they can be looking at alternative ways. One of the things that we've learned that we could do more of is go look at alternative sites around the nation in terms of how they've worked through some of these challenges. But when you only have one kind of administrator, you're kind of limited in the ability and the capacity to go around and learn and grow. So having that additional position allows more flexibility to learn better practices, be involved in the recruiting efforts, be involved in creative ways of increasing those vacancies.
Thank you so very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we'll go to Assemblywoman Dickman.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair, and thank you for being here. It's really good to see you again. My question has to do with, there's a budget amendment for a new youth programs administrator, correct?
Thank you for the question. Major General Andre Berry, Nevada Military Department. Yes, once your program has more than, and this comes under the DOD guidelines, once you have more than 2 programs, you can apply for an administrator to oversee all your youth programs. So now we have 3 with the potential to grow, because right now you see an increase in ask for dispositions overall, but when we started growing, all of it came under Ms. Tyler. And again, and she's not in the youth business, education business. And so this allows us to have a person to oversee all of our youth programs. So when we talk about growing, we talk about working with local school district, when we talk about MOUs, when we talk about working with the Department of Defense, now you would have an administrator that oversees all your programs, works on the budgeting, helps us to do our long-term planning, helps us with our strategic planning, and is an educator. And I go back to something that was brought up before, and we have somebody in mind, if we're successful, that knows education and would hit the ground running. So I try to stay in my lane, so to speak, and we have learned that now that we got 5th graders running around, we got 16 to 18-year-olds running around, we got parents asking questions, we got curriculum we have to follow through. We're dealing with the Department of Education, Department of Defense, so we just need the subject matter expertise to oversee that. So that's why we're asking for that position, which I think is 75% federally funded.
Thank you so much, and you actually answered my actual question before I asked it, so how you would ensure that these programs would be successful. So appreciate the answer. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we'll go to Chair Harris.
Thank you, Chair Watts. Can you please briefly discuss how the role of the new cybersecurity specialist position would differ from the state's existing cybersecurity-related positions in other agencies, and how it would be able to coordinate with those other state agencies to improve the state's cybersecurity?
Thank you for the question, Major General Andre Berry, Nevada Military Department. Right now, your Nevada Military Department has at least 20 people who are working in our cyber force protection. We started a committee. In addition, I said earlier, met with the director of the Air National Guard. We're remissioning one of our, possibly remissioning one of our units to work just cyber. All of those are federal employees and work the federal mission. What you don't have access to as a state is their expertise on a consistent basis. If we have a state employee who's a Nevada Guardsman, that person is able to interact with and connect with from an integration and coordination standpoint, get access to the resources, get access to the training, get access to the expertise, get access to working with those teams, work with existing state organizations on cyber, work on exercises, so you get access to all of that. Right now, if we would have some type of attack or a challenge in our state, I would have to put people on state active duty to, we say, ramp up or have the ability to integrate with them. If we had a state employee who's a Nevada Guardsman, you have that ongoing effort on a regular basis, having access to the resources and integrating with them. And they would be able to not only work with the state, but access the resources on the National Guard level. The military is putting so much into cyber right now, and our state is not getting access to some of that great expertise. And so this would allow that to happen on a consistent basis.
Okay, thank you. And Chair Watts, if it's okay with you, I had one additional question. This is about the small arms range that's being proposed. Has the National Guard spoken with Las Vegas Metro at all? They have built this very large training facility, which I think was designed to have partners come in and, you know, pick up a portion of the costs and allow multiple folks to use it. Have y'all considered jumping in on that as opposed to hiring 2 new positions, having your own small range at all?
Thank you for the question, Major General Andre Berry, Nevada Military Department. Yes, I met with the sheriff, and they have requirements as a law enforcement organization. So to integrate another 2,300 people into their training it's just impossible. And that's why we have the challenge that we have right now. We have to beg, borrow, and steal to go to organizations to say, can we come on your range to qualify? So when I met with the sheriff, one of the things that they've allowed to do is they will have an agreement to give us land. We're in the same exact location. So we're going to expand the range is what we're going to do. And but we'll also would have to have our we'd have to have our own experts and personnel to work it. But in addition, the Department of Public Safety will be able to qualify there. In addition, the Department of Corrections will be able to qualify there. In addition, your Air Force and the Army Reservists will be able to qualify there. So it's just expanding the existing facility and giving, and just from a cost-saving standpoint, I can tell you about the cost saving for the Nevada Military Department, but you also have probably a cost savings for the Department of Public Safety and Department of Corrections. So answering your question, we did meet with them. We looked at it as an alternative, and they're gracious to allow you to come in at convenience. We can go qualify at Nellis at convenience. We can go qualify at Hawthorne at convenience. So most times I have to put people on a bus, take them out of state to meet the requirements. And so, yes, we did ask, and this was the best alternative we could come up with. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Next, we'll go to Senator Nguyen.
Kind of following up on that question, how do we determine that 2 specialists were needed at that new small arms firing range?
Major General Andre Berry, Nevada Military Department. Thank you for the question. Just for the regular ops tempo of what it takes to qualify, 3/4 of our personnel, again, are what we call drill status guardsmen. So when we look at the ability to have to go out of state and what's required there and the hours that we wanted to have people available and the days of the week, we determined too. Now, I'll be the first to tell you we could probably use more, but I'm also understand that, be careful that I don't over ask. So, but this would allow us to meet the minimum qualifications to keep our personnel down south qualified, meet the days and the hours.
And then my other question is, you had mentioned this like agreement with Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department to like they had land that you were able to build this facility if this CIP and this was like granted. Would they contribute staff to that location as well, since there's that agreement that they're able to use that, or no?
Thank you for the question, Major General Andre Berry, Nevada Military Department. In terms of, if you're asking about the operations of maybe opening and closing, but not the ability to qualify our people, because our qualifications are different than the Metropolitan Police Department. So if that's what you're asking, they wouldn't help with the qualification piece, but possibly with the hours. I haven't asked that, so I'm not sure.
Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead, Senator Gocochea.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. And again, you were talking about the small arms range in the south. What do you have available in the north? Do you train here in the north as well, or are you going to send everybody south?
So sorry for laughing. Major General Andre Berry, Nevada Military Department. In the entire history of the National Guard, we've never had a dedicated range, and which is why this is so huge. And we worked with our congressional delegation to get funding to start the design so we could use the Hawthorne range. So we're hopeful that if this is successful in getting federal funding, that we will have a range up north. So we have received the funding for the design of a range at Hawthorne, so the people up north will go to Hawthorne to qualify. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Great question. So I have a question about Decision Unit E128. You mentioned, you've already discussed some of this earlier with kind of the growing programs and activities. But can you talk about kind of the impact to your office's administrative functions from the new programs and from the Division of Emergency Management, and how you landed on 5 new administrative positions to help support those kind of growing needs and scope?
Cheryl Tyler for the record. So we have some new programs such as Family Services, Range, Starbase, Youth Challenge, and psychological health position and all that stuff. So those are the new programs we've had recently that we didn't request additional support staff from the director's office. Plus, now we have DM about 40 FTEs as well. So currently, we only have 1 personnel analyst and 1 personnel tech. So that's over 240 positions, plus with the expansion of some of these positions we're requesting, that supports for our personnel. So, and then on top of that, our personnel are very heavily involved in state active duty. We recently have a lot more state active duty missions, hence they're the ones, these 2 personnel are also doing all the processing in, per se, for the state active duty personnel. So we have about 1,200 SAD PCNs that they manage everything. So it just is not feasible for 2 people to do all the payroll, personnel, disciplinary measures, and such for the whole agency. In terms of the fiscal staff, so we currently have 4 fiscal staff doing all the approvals of payments. So with all these programs, they have personnel dedicated to operate the actual program. But in terms of fiscal, paying the bills, paying their programs, doing their contracts, all of those still falls within the director's office staff. So these are the personnel that we came up with, that we need 2 more accounting personnel, 1 admin personnel, because we don't have an admin personnel for the whole for the director's office, and 1 personnel tech and 1 ASO to be a deputy for me, because right now I'm still heavily involved in the day-to-day fiscal preparation, budget preparation, work programs. So it comes into play where we need more checks and balance and make sure we're following all the accounting process as well.
Major General Andre Berry, Nevada Military Department. If I can add to that, we have dumped so much on our office with our growth, and we're postured in position to continue to grow. And without the support staff, it's just impossible to be efficient. We've run into some challenges, and she always does her job with a smile on her face, as her staff does. But as we continue to grow, if we don't offer them some support, I'll probably lose them. So but if you think about from Starbase to Youth Challenge to Department of Emergency Management to State Active Duty, to, all that comes under their office, and we just have to have the support. And there's nothing more frustrating than a soldier or airman not getting paid on time, or us not filing the proper paperwork on time, or having the right accounting processes. And we've given all that to Ms. Tyler's office without any additional support or resources. And so I just would be remiss if I didn't speak up and say, if we want to continue to grow and be efficient and effective, then we just got to find ways to better support them. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate both of your responses. Next, we'll go to Assemblywoman Brown-May.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you. It's great to see you. I have questions relative to Decision Unit E350, the unclassified psychological health manager position. First, I have to say thanks very much for really considering the mental health of those who serve, right? And we deal with that in many, many ways, and we're seeing, obviously increased mental health concerns across all of our communities, especially as we've come through a pandemic, and then serving and all that goes with that. So could you talk a little bit about how this addition of the one unclassified psychological health manager position in Northern Nevada will help to improve existing services? I understand you have federally funded positions. This one would be general fund. So how do you feel like that's going to add to address some of the mental health issues the National Guard members are facing?
Thank you for the question. Major General Andre Berry, Nevada Military Department. There's nothing more I'm more passionate about than this right here in terms of when my first year in this job, and I went and asked one of our psychological health managers, what was your caseload? And it was something like almost 100 to 1. And I was reminding people that my 9th day on the job, we had a suicide. And when we looked at the resources and support that we did not have in these positions, and the ability to reach out, and the ability to have access to someone to talk to, and there's nothing normal about, you could be playing a high school sport, one day, and 6 months later be in a war zone in the military, and then come back and ask to be integrated into a normal society. And without ensuring that we are taking care of not just the members and their families, then we are be remiss, and we were hugely deficient in that area. So, thankfully, the legislature last session gave us a position to be down south. And what we're asking for is just to put one up north. Again, from caseload to support to resources. We have so many people coming now asking for assistance, but now we're having the ability to offer the assistance and offer them the counseling and offer them the support. So this is just our continuous ensuring that we have the resources in the right place. And I believe this position would be a supervisory position, if I'm not mistaken, the one we're asking for, or no? Oh, sorry. Anyway, but it would be in addition to making sure that we're fulfilling the North in terms of personnel as we are the South. And we have about 2,000 of our personnel up north, and about the majority are down south. So this is just ensuring that we have the right resources in place and lowering the caseload of those who are asking for help. I can tell you, when you talk about return on investment, when you talk about mental health and wellness, when you talk about having access to right sources, this is the one resource that is probably utilized more than anything that we have. So this will be a continuous of making sure our personnel have the support they need. Thank you.
Thank you. I do have one more question. On the next decision unit, if you don't mind, E126 is the security positions. I do have a Army Reserves military police officer in my family, and so I'm really passionate about security. Can you talk a little bit about what are the anticipated efficiencies in the daily operations of the Nevada Air Guard base with the 3 new military security officer positions, if those are approved?
Cheryl Tyler for the record. So currently we have MSO1 positions that are doing the actual day-to-day guard security, patrolling our airbase, and some duties like that. They do not have, there's 3 shifts in the base because there's 24/7 coverage. So there are no state employee supervisors for those MSO1s. These 3 positions are MSO2s that would actually be the shift supervisors for each of those shifts. And under the direction of so there are military personnel AGR positions that are also working in conjunction with the state employees. But this would actually provide the state supervisor position for each shift for the state employees there. Thank you.
Thank you. I believe next we'll go back to Senator Goycochea.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And how would the recommended salary increase for the Adjutant General improve the operations of the Office of Military? And now this is a tough question. Is this a case of where we're dealing with compactus? We've got to bump you up to make some room for the guys underneath you because that's how it works.
I'll start, then you go. And this is a hard one to talk about. Again, thank you for the question, Major General Andre Berry, Nevada Military Department. One of the reasons that this came up, and I tell everybody this, I know exactly what I signed up for when I took the job, but currently, if you look at those who are most qualified to replace me or come up next, one of the reasons why they probably possibly wouldn't put in for the job is because it's a pay cut. They take a reduction in pay to do more work and have no hair. So, so I thought it just important to ensure that we compensate whoever sits in this seat so that all these qualified applicants would want to put in for the job versus asking them to go backwards in their pay to do this job. So that's the biggest reason. I'll throw it over to Ms. Tyler.
Cheryl Tyler for the record. And Senator Goycochea are actually correct. Since DM fell under us, the chief of DM actually makes the same as TAG. So what this DEC unit is proposing is to just increase General Berry's salary to match the other directors of the other agencies' salaries are.
Yes, and I appreciate that, and I think we all understand it, but we need to put it on the record, so thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. Members, are there any additional questions on this budget account? All right, seeing none, now we can move on to budget account 3655.
Cheryl Tyler for the record. So now we're going to budget account 3655. Budget account 3655 funds are utilized for the operations and maintenance of the State Emergency Operations Center. And there's only one enhancement deck unit for this decision, for this budget account, and it's to request funding authority for various facilities maintenance projects for the building. Pending your questions, thank you.
Thank you very much. I believe we do have one question from Assemblyman Hafen. Oh, he's not here. Never mind. All right, so I do have a question. Just as what's the estimated timeline for completing the facilities maintenance projects at the Emergency Operations Center?
Cheryl Tyler for the record. Agency projects to hopefully have these projects completed within the biennium.
All right, thank you very much. Members, are there any other questions on this budget account? Seeing none, I think we can move on to our last budget account for the day, 3673.
Good morning. I'll take over from here. I'm John Backetall. I'm the Deputy Administrator for the Division of Emergency Management. And we'll start off with a couple things here about our vision. So we're building the resilience through coordination and partnerships. And this we'll touch base on later when we talk about the increase in travel. Our mission's coordinating the efforts for Nevada to prevent, protect, mitigate from, respond to, and then eventually recover from natural, man-made, and technological disasters. And if you've paid attention in the last couple of weeks, we've been heavily activated for the flooding events that started from the atmospheric rivers here in western Nevada as they transition across the state into eastern Nevada. So from there, our values: stewardship, integrity, innovation, collaboration, and teamwork. We have a few public bodies that we participate in, and the Governor's Office is our main partner in leading the Homeland Security Commission, as well as the Committee on Finance that helps take the federal funding we get and manage those funds for several law enforcement agencies, as well as other operations across the state when it comes to our Homeland Security efforts. The Governor developed recently in the last biennium was our Cybersecurity Task Force. And your question earlier in regards to the efforts of the new cyber position with the National Guard, This is all embedded within a task force, which includes the Office of Cyber Defense under DPS. It includes the National Guard for their partners and their expertise, as well as the Office of Informatics Technology here within the state, EATS, so that we have a true task force in those efforts. And then the NRS 414 that our agency falls under, we have the Emergency Preparedness Working Group, which helps us manage and allocate the funding from the U.S. Department of Energy for the efforts for the counties that participate in the transportation of waste materials into and out of the Nevada National Security Site. And then the Hazard Mitigation Working Group, which allows us, after every disaster or even pre-disaster, which included COVID-19 money, we get a certain allotment after a disaster to help mitigate the efforts from happening again. And so this working group helps look at all the different programs so that we can manage that money that we get after federally declared disasters. And then under NRS, we have several other mandated committees. The Nevada Resilience Advisory Committee, those are our partners across the state from all the different government levels and agencies to help us listen to them and get their ideas of how we could help the communities, again, do those 5 mission areas. The Nevada Tribal Emergency Coordinating Council, this is an effort by Nevada to assist the tribes by creating this council, which is tribal emergency managers. And again, they advise us on what we can do to better help prepare them as well as respond to disasters. The State Disaster Identification Coordination Committee, we call that SDICC for short. That is a group of the 2 medical examiners in the state, as well as the coroners across the state, and then several other partners, including the state HIPAA officer, to help manage events like family unification after a disaster, similar to 1 October event in Southern Nevada, or should we have some other sort of natural disaster that severely impacts our ability to unify or identify individuals and get them back to their loved ones. The Nevada Interstate Mutual Aid Committee is our effort to move resources around the state by having plans, processes, and contracts already in place, and we used this heavily the last couple weeks during the flooding events. The State Search and Rescue Board, this board is made up of the sheriffs around the state. They are responsible in statute for the search and rescue efforts in the state, and then our agency helps coordinate the federal resources to help them locate individuals in their time of need. Next slide. Our threats and hazards that we focus on, you can see down the one side, it lists the major things people are used to hearing about: the cybersecurity, earthquake, wildfire, floods, winter storms, the pandemic, we're all going to remember for quite a while, as well as criminal acts, the man-made disasters. But we then look at all of those events and we assess what our threats are, what the hazards are, and what is our capability to help overcome those events. And we have a process we go through every year to assess that at the local level. This isn't the state making decisions for the entire state. We meet with all of our partners, assess the situations, and then we come up with priorities that we can focus on with the federal money that we get and apply that to actually buying down or reducing the risk in those jurisdictions. So we call it a POETI model. It starts with planning, organization, equipment, training, and exercise. Nevada does not get enough federal money for us to be able to meet all 5 of those mission areas. So we tend to focus heavily on our planning efforts. As the legislature has put on us, we do review school plans, resort plans, utility plans, and work with them to make them a little more hardened, a little more resilient. And then the training and exercise that we can help facilitate with our expertise, that's our biggest preparedness effort to help support all of the local jurisdictions. So we focus every year on selecting 3 new priorities based upon what our local government is telling us is truly impacting them the most. So this year for 2023, when we did the assessment last fall, we began our operational coordination, operational communication, and supply chain integrity. This may sound like a bunch of words that don't make a lot of sense, but when it comes to operational coordination, that's the integrating of all the local resources with state resources, law, fire, EMS, the different organizational governments. So we tend to have government officials that are county commissioners. They're also the fire chief. They could be a deputy. They could be the waterworks person in that community as well. So they're wearing multiple hats. So being able to help them design and develop how they're going to coordinate their operations in their community is a really big important deal so that we have an effective and efficient response. Operational communications, the state of Nevada has so many different frequencies between the radio systems that are used from law, fire, and EMS, even with inside the same jurisdiction. For instance, Ely City and then White Pine County. The law, fire, and EMS are all on different frequencies and are not able to communicate without rewording information back through their dispatch centers. It delays response and it's not very effective. And then supply chain integrity. I know we've heard a lot about the logistic supply chain issues over the years since COVID, but this is a little bit different. This is the integrity and security of supply chain, our energy. We've had power outages on New Year's Eve that took 77,000 people without power in northern Nevada for several days when it was below zero. Then we had the liquid propane shortage, which affected a lot of rural Nevada not being able to get the propane to heat their homes. And then we had the fuel pipeline get shut down in southern Nevada for several days due to a leak. That's integrity and security of our supply chains. So we're focused heavily on these three mission areas for this year. So just in the last biennium, we've had the pandemic response, New Year's Eve missions supporting the National Guard as well as other resources in 3 regions around the state. Our grants management office, again, we're heavily federally funded. The flooding with Nye, Moapa, Elko. The Caldor fire, which came into the Tahoe Basin. The humanitarian issues with snow impacts. We had people trapped in Lake Tahoe for 8 hours in their cars with another atmospheric river getting ready to pound them. The propane emergencies that we spoke of just a moment ago. Winter storms without power that I just mentioned. And then if you saw the pictures of State Route 208 where the rock slide took out that canyon, and that severely impacted some folks from Douglas County and Lyon County where they now had to do a 3-hour detour instead of a 30-minute drive. So it doesn't sound that bad if you're just trying to go to the grocery store, but if they have a medical issue, that delays the EMS support to help get to them. Or the kids getting to school. Now they have a 6-hour addition to their day to get to and from school. Good news, that canyon opened back up last week. Again, on the other side, the Caldor fire, Tamarack fire, election integrity, fuel supply concerns, the state network when it was cut down with the fiber cut, earthquakes, trainings and exercises. We buy down our risk by that POETI model. And again, we focus heavily on the planning, exercise, and training efforts within our organization to prepare for the next unknown incident. So what do? We spend a lot of time coordinating. We have that travel budget because no one wants us to show up during their incident and give them a business card and say, I'm from the government, I'm here to help, especially down at the local level. So we focus heavily on being able to get out to them, help them with their planning efforts, give them the technical assistance that they need, offer the training and offer the exercise. We do this with a lot of our own staff. We don't have a large budget to go out and contract with major companies, so we try to hire the right people that can help integrate into local government. And then we also hire local responders to help us teach our classes and help offset the cost to deliver what we do. We have a 24-hour duty officer program. They take at least 1 call daily. If not, when events are happening, they're taking about 100 calls a day. We take that a week at a time and we share the wealth across that because it's a very busy program. And at some points we have to take people off because they're just getting hit too hard with all of the calls. Every hazmat call, every train derailment, every search and rescue, we take calls on all of those and help facilitate the coordination of people and resources. Our operations center is just closing the activation from the flood recently, but we're preparing for the spring thaw. If you looked at the mountains, every time you walk outside, there's 60 to 80 feet of snow in certain locations up there. It's going to come down at some point, similarly to 2017. So we've been planning on this since December. So we will more than likely be activated to help support the local jurisdictions with that effort. Our threat and hazard risk assessment, that's how we come up with those priorities. It's actually a federally required process that's called THIRA, the Threat and Hazard Identification Risk Assessment, that gives us those priorities we focus on every year. We have 2 incident management assistant teams that have been developed since the legislature passed that for us a couple cycles ago. And we have multiple people in the south and multiple in the north across all kinds of modalities from public health, law enforcement, fire, trying to bring together a good, well-rounded team to help support us in any type of incident. We deployed 2 of these recently, one to Eureka County to help with the massive flooding they've had, and one to Lincoln County to help after the dam weir started to break away and cause flooding. And then our interoperable communications. We have a statewide coordinator for this within our organization, and I'm sure we'll talk more about that here shortly with the position request. We do help facilitate the tribal efforts in the state of Nevada. Several years ago, we created the Nevada Tribal Emergency Coordinating Council, which was our effort to assist the tribes because they were not able to meet their grant requirements for the federal funding that they were getting. We were given 2 contract positions through the Department of Public Safety at the time to help us offset the load that those individuals have to take on. Again, similar to rural Nevada, they tend to have 7, 8 hats that they wear as a one-person shop. They do not have time to do grant reporting, submit justifications, all of that kind of effort that is required to receive the funding. So we have 2 contract staff members currently, one that we fund out of a federal grant to help offset those costs, and then public health preparedness through the Division of Public and Behavioral Health gives us funding to help with tribal health emergency management, similar to the state PHP program. So with that, we do a lot of planning, training, and exercise to support them. We do radiological readiness within our organization. We have a program where we receive the Department of Energy money, and we make sure every county in the state, and then the larger states, including their medical centers, all have calibrated working radiological detection equipment to help support should there be an incident or should there be a nuclear event, that we're able to help manage the population with contamination control as well as getting over the results of that type of incident. And then again, our grants department, we help support with the Homeland Security grant, the Emergency Management Preparedness grant, the Department of Energy grants, and then after a disaster or pre-disaster, getting hazard mitigation funding, as well as the post-disaster funding that comes with the public disasters. So we'll get into the budget enhancements for us. E367, this would be for the 911 coordinator that we have asked in this budget to help a brand new position within the state of Nevada. We have requested this in the past. It did not leave the department budget to even get a chance to get to the legislature. And then the following biennium after that, it was requested by the Department of Public Safety. We had left the department at that time, so I'm not sure where and how that position eventually ended. The responsibilities for this position is going to be to not only review the entire systems as they lay out across the state, because each jurisdiction has their own, but looking at the planning efforts, the possible funding, the next generation 911 upgrades, and then all of the requirements of reporting that is required within the federal communications to receive federal funding to hopefully offset the cost of this position in the future. So again, we had those previous requests, and this position does come with a travel because they will have to go out to the local jurisdictions and coordinate on the current operations that they have and the improvements that they're going to need to increase their 911 capabilities. E370 is our building, we say rent, it's actually the facilities costs. The department owns the building, but there's a whole lot of costs that go into it with that many people in there, and then the activations of the operations center. NDF will be moving out here shortly. So the Public Employee Benefits Program is moving out of their location, and actually this coming week we'll start that move. And then from there, a couple weeks to facilitate the move for NDF to move into their building and under the Conservation and Natural Resources facility. And then a couple weeks to help upgrade our side of the building over there. So we're looking at moving into the rest of our building sometime here in between May and June. We currently have people in locations that aren't exactly great office facilities, or they're doubled up in areas, or they're using the Emergency Operations Center for space because we do not have enough space in our building. So this has been coordinated for several years. E373 is to transfer that tribal health coordinator contract into an FTE for the state. It's very hard, as you've heard from everybody, to recruit, hire, and retain positions, especially when they're contract positions. This position has been held by 5 different people over the 4 years we've had it, because again, it's a contract position with no benefits. So we're looking at having this position transferred from the contract that it is now into an FTE within the state system. And the funding would be exactly what the funding is now for that position out of the granting from public health preparedness. E374 is the tribal EM contract. This is the exact same thing, but for emergency management only, not for public health. We currently fund that position again under contract with the Emergency Management Performance Grant that is given to us by FEMA. That same money would be allocated to fund the state full-time equivalent. The next enhancement is our budget for travel, E376. I spoke about this, that the wrong thing to do is show up at an event and say, here's my business card. We spend a lot of time in the field supporting single-man operations, as well as coordinating, we call it an Urban Area Security Initiative, the UASI out of Southern Nevada. They have special funding that they receive because of the type of environment they have with the population, as well as the transient population of our visitors, that they get a large sum of Homeland Security money that we manage. We have to attend those meetings, we have to coordinate the funding, as well as help facilitate the planning, training, and exercise under that grant. And then in rural Nevada, taking the load off of the different local jurisdictions and tribal jurisdictions, we're asking to true up our travel budget because we submit multiple work plans throughout the year going through IFC to try and get additional authority. We already have the funding that's given to us under our federal grant, and we're looking to help facilitate a faster, more efficient process. E377 is the New Year's Eve mission. The Interim Finance Committee has asked us for years to include this into our budget instead of showing up there and asking for the same mission to be repeated every year, which is our Nevada National Guard deployment down to Southern Nevada to help support the local responders and let the visitors know that they're safe there on New Year's Eve. Most recently, we've transitioned a lot of that support to a medical surge support at the major institutions down there, where we deploy the medical units in the National Guard that are trained to triage and treat patients outside of the hospitals and decompress a lot of the medical pressure that they receive. We also have contract position that is a budget enhancement of E378. This is our preparedness coordinator that has been with us again for 5 years. In our responses back to the questions that were asked to us, again, recruiting, hiring, and retaining is very difficult, especially with contract positions. And we feel that a contract position is something that is a short-term fix, not a long-term circumvented process of the legislature. So we're asking for this position to be transferred from its current contract status into a full-time equivalent within the state. Again, similar to the other positions, the funding is in place, and it would just be the classification of the position and the creating of the PCN. E379 is a similar type contract position. This one's actually been with the department for 10 years, a contractor for 10 years. I think it's time that we look at making that a full-time equivalent. The funding is there again. It's the same funding that we've had in place under the federal granting, and it would just transfer into an FTE status. The next two are one-shot appropriations. We actually had these built into our budget, E710 and E711. We have our EATS required updates of our computers, and then the operations center also has its own computer systems and networks in there that are under the same update cycle. So they were moved into one-shot appropriations and taken out of our biennium request. I am not Jared Franco. I'm here filling in for our ASO. So again, I'm John Backadall, and I'm ready for any questions.
Thank you very much. I believe we have a question from Assemblywoman Gorlow.
Thank you very much, Chair. I had a quick question about the 911 system, the Nevada Next Generation. Can you describe some of the challenges that the existing 911 system is having and how a new statewide 911 coordinator position would improve the state's existing system?
Thank you, ma'am. John Backadall from DEM for the record, Deputy Administrator. The 911 system in some of the rural components doesn't even exist at this point. So you could be in some of the rural locations and be on the side of the road and need assistance, and you're not going to get it. You're going to get diverted to another system somewhere else, which will delay the response in getting to you. The rest of the state that has 911 does not have the next-gen components, which allows the texting of 911 and other more mobile resources to enhance the capabilities. This specific position that we're requesting, we're one of 4 states that currently does not have the position because of historical efforts to utilize the funds for other reasons. By cleaning that up and putting this towards this position, it will do all of the reporting as well as the collections of the 911 fees that could be used to actually fund this position. So this will do all of the reporting, all of the analysis, and then the updating planning for the 911 systems across our state to make them the next generation 911, which will be eligible for the federal grantings to do those upgrades.
Thank you very much. And follow up? Okay, thank you. Has the agency looked at other sources also for funding this position?
Thank you for the question. John Backetall, DEM Deputy Administrator for that. We cannot use any of the funding that we have within the Emergency Management Performance Grant or the Homeland Security Grant that we received from DHS to pay for this. So the only way we could do this is to do the general fund to establish the position. And then from there, in the future, we could allocate the 911 fees that are already applied to everyone's phone use to fund the position.
Thank you. Members, any additional questions on this budget account? Seeing none, thank you again for that very thorough presentation. We appreciate it. That concludes our budget hearings for today, and we have one item left on our agenda, which is public comment. Anyone wishing to make public comment will ask to limit their remarks to 2 minutes. To please clearly state and spell their name before beginning. If you'd like to call in and make public comment, you can find that call-in information on our agendas, which are publicly posted, including on the legislature's website. So with that, do we have anyone wishing to provide public comment, either here in Carson City or down in Las Vegas? Seeing none at this time, Broadcast Production Services, can you see if we have anyone wishing to provide public comment by phone?
Chair, the public line is open and working, but there are no callers at this time.
All right, and seeing no one else coming forward, that concludes our business for the day, and I believe we'll be starting with closings on Wednesday. Thank you, everyone. This meeting's adjourned.